Hey friends, today I'll be diving deep into the newly released South Korean supernatural horror film, Exhuma. I've uncovered a lot of hidden meanings and plot details, so you'll grasp every symbol, scene, and subtle detail from the film. At the start of the film, we are introduced to two shamans, the experienced senior, Harim, and her junior, Bongil. Bongil has just arrived from a flight, and they're both heading to Los Angeles. At the airport, they are greeted by Park's accountant, who picks them up and provides some background information. Park is a wealthy Korean-American businessman whose family moved to America generations ago. Rather than going directly to Park's residence, they head straight to the hospital. There, they meet Park's wife, and the accountant explains the purpose of their visit. Although Park's wife is a skeptic and doesn't believe in shamans or rituals, the situation has become desperate. Harim examines their newborn son, who is suffering from a mysterious, incurable illness. This is why she has been summoned. After performing a ritual, Harim senses the presence of Park's ancestors, particularly his father and grandfather. Park's father is currently paralyzed, but the more intriguing detail is about Park's grandfather. His tomb, dating back almost 100 years, remains in Korea. Following this, Harim visits Park's home, where she provides some insight into her role as a shaman, what they do, and how they confront evil spirits. Later, she has a conversation with Park, who reveals the long history of misfortune that has plagued his family. His elder brother tragically took his own life in a mental hospital, and Park himself has faced numerous hardships, including his wife's miscarriage and his son's worsening health. Park is willing to do anything to save his son. Harim then explains that the root cause of their troubles is a grave scroll, the unsettled spirit of Park's grandfather, whose presence lingers in Korea and is haunting the family. While she assures them that things can be fixed, she also mentions that the process will require the help of more individuals. Next, we meet Feng Shui expert Kim and his assistant, Xiao Manser, who are in Korea digging a grave alongside the funeral home owner, Young. Feng Shui is all about harmonizing energy in the environment. To better understand the plot, let's delve into Kim's philosophy. He explains that humans are intrinsically connected to the earth, consuming what grows from it, and upon death, they return to the soil to eventually be reborn. This reflects a perpetual cycle of life and death. For the past 40 years, Kim has dedicated himself to finding peaceful resting places for the deceased, even for those who may have been despised in life. While many dismiss his work as mere superstition or fraud, those in the know understand that Feng Shui is both a science and a form of spirituality. Returning to the story, we learn about an old lady whose spirit has been barricaded on her land, haunting her family through nightmares. When Kim and Young investigate, they discover that the old lady had no teeth, a disturbing detail since they find her remains to be missing from her body. It is believed that if any belongings are removed or diminished after death, the spirits can become restless. Furthermore, if final rites aren't performed correctly or traditionally, it can incite anger among spirits. In a twist, the old lady's grandson kept her teeth as a memento. By returning these teeth to her, the family is able to restore peace, proving that the issue wasn't as grave as they thought. Subsequently, Kim and Young visit Harim and Bongil to discuss Park's situation. They learn that Park belongs to a very wealthy yet peculiar family with numerous issues rooted in their land in Korea. Recognizing that this is within his realm of expertise, Kim agrees to assist. Meanwhile, we shift back to Los Angeles, where Park's mother expresses her disapproval of his decision to dig up his grandfather's grave, worrying about what his aunt will think. She is skeptical of these traditions and believes that through prayer, everything will work out. However, Park is determined to save his son, which drives him to take on the role of gravedigger. But why this particular task? The answer will soon unfold. The following day, Park returns to Korea and checks into a hotel. He then meets Kim, who is eager to gather information about his grandfather's grave, as this is part of the process for transferring a body from one grave to another. Park has come alone. His family remains in Los Angeles. He takes Kim to his grandfather's grave, which is situated on a mountain near the border. As they approach, they notice foxes roaming the area, an unsettling sight, as these animals typically avoid graveyards, making it a potential bad omen. Upon inspecting the tombstone, they find it devoid of any name. Instead, it features a series of random numbers and incantations. This is rather odd, especially for a wealthy family. The absence of a name raises questions about why they would want to conceal the identity of the grave's occupant. Imagine coming across such a grave without any indication of who is buried there. Only anonymous numbers would leave you in the dark about the family connection. Curious, Kim inquires further about Park's grandfather. Park explains that his grandfather had made significant contributions to the country, and this grave was established in his honor, based on the recommendation of a monk named Gi-sun. However, Kim questions why a royal grave would be so unadorned. Park explains that during that era, grave robbers were prevalent, prompting the decision to create a simple burial site without a name to protect it from theft. This explanation seems strange to Kim, who finds it hard to accept. As they stand near the grave, Kim senses a malevolent energy surrounding the site and warns Park that the area could be dangerous. He cautions that continuing could put their lives at risk. Nevertheless, driven by the urgent need to save his son, Park insists on proceeding with the exhumation. Later that evening, back at Park's home, Kim shares a conversation with him. During their talk, Park opens up about his daughter, whom he loves dearly and is soon to be married. This emotional exchange leads Park to reveal that he also has a son who is gravely ill, and he pleads for help to save him. In response, Harim suggests that they dig up the grave to remove the evil presence. She offers to perform a ritual to banish the malevolence, and Kim readily agrees to assist with the excavation. The following day, Park's aunt joins them for the ritual, as she is the granddaughter of the deceased and her consent is essential. Harim arrives with ritualistic items, including the bodies of 5 pigs, initiating a perilous ceremony to protect the 5 individuals who will excavate the grave. This ritual is intense and treacherous for those involved. Harim performs a dance while singing loudly, butchering the pigs and consuming their blood. As Kim examines the remains, he struggles to decipher the inscriptions on the body. The only option left is cremation. They plan to burn the skeleton, as it is believed that after being buried for so long, the soul becomes attached to the bones. By destroying the skeleton, they hope to liberate the soul, granting it peace. One of the workers encounters a bizarre, human-headed snake and kills it. The snake emits a horrifying scream reminiscent of a human, signaling a dire omen. The weather suddenly worsens, prompting Kim to advise Park to halt the cremation for the day. Park agrees, and they relocate the coffin to a ward. However, Kim grows increasingly suspicious of Park's family. He visits a nearby village to inquire about the monk Gi-sun, but discovers that no one in the village has ever heard of him. This raises more red flags: the nameless grave, the remote location, the appearance of a human-headed snake, and now, the absence of any knowledge about the monk who suggested the burial site. Kim is perplexed by the multitude of strange occurrences. Meanwhile, back at the ward, a man opens the coffin, seeking treasure, oblivious to the impending curse. This intrusion infuriates Park's grandfather's spirit, which then emerges from the coffin. Harim witnesses this alarming event and realizes the impending disaster. The spirit, cold and starved after a prolonged period without proper final rites, begins its wrath by killing Park's son and daughter-in-law. It then sets its sights on Park, but the spirit remains weak, unable to pass through doors or windows without permission, providing Park with a temporary reprieve. Kim contacts Park, revealing that the spirit of his grandfather is determined to annihilate his bloodline for failing to honor him, neglecting annual rituals, and relocating to America. The spirit is enraged that its grave has been forgotten, and Kim urgently warns Park not to open the door. Suddenly, a knock echoes from the door, and a voice resembling Kim's can be heard outside. While Kim is still on the phone with Park, the voice at the door also claims to be Kim. Kim urgently clarifies over the phone that the voice outside is a malevolent spirit attempting to deceive him. Park should refrain from opening the door but may open the window. Unfortunately, Park makes the grave error of opening the window, revealing that the real Kim stands at the door while the phone call was from the spirit of his grandfather. With permission no longer necessary, the spirit enters and ensnares Park. It becomes clear that Park's family amassed their wealth by betraying Korea during the Korean-Japanese War. Park's grandfather had allied with Japan for monetary gain and power, explaining the family's affluence. Now, the spirit is resolute in its mission to exact revenge on Park for these transgressions. After some time, Kim learns about a worker who had come to dig up Grandpa's grave. Kim goes to meet him, and the worker tells her that they are being haunted by snakes. He says he's dying, and that everything started from the day he bit a snake with a human head, which was uncovered when Grandpa's grave was dug up. Meanwhile, Harim was performing a ritual when Grandpa's spirit arrived at Bongil. She managed to capture it, but the spirit was very evil and powerful, so she left and went to her next task. With each action, her appearance became clearer, meaning the spirit was taking control of her body. Now, Kim realized there was only one solution. He asked Young and Harim to cremate the body to break the curse and get rid of the spirit, which was still attached to the bones. However, they needed permission from Grandpa's daughter, Kim's aunt, because it was her father and her property. Most of her family and belongings had already been destroyed. Since the body couldn't be cremated there, they decided to burn the bones instead. Kim approached the aunt and explained that the child was innocent and needed to be saved no matter what. The aunt agreed, and they burned the bones, freeing Grandpa's spirit. Everyone finally felt a sense of relief as the spirit vanished, allowing peace to return. After some time, Kim learns about a worker who had come to dig up Grandpa's grave. Kim goes to meet him, and the worker tells her that they are being haunted by snakes. He says he's dying, and that everything started from the day he bit a snake with a human head, which was uncovered when Grandpa's grave was dug up. To uncover the truth, Kim returns to the grave and finds the same human-headed snake. The worker had cut off the snake's head, which looked like a woman's. These creatures are called Ana, known as evil spirits, although in some places they are considered good and help people in the mountains. When Kim digs further, they find a tall, standing coffin. Surprised, they quickly call Harm Bongil and Young, and all three work together to pull out this coffin, which is over 7 feet tall and sealed from the outside. None of them can understand why a coffin was buried standing upright under Grandpa's grave, and this becomes the biggest mystery. To solve it, they visit the man Kim first met, asking him to keep the coffin safe for the night. He agrees, but before leaving it there, Harim performs a protective ritual using rice and blood, creating a safety circle around the coffin to keep it secure. Harim and Kim talk to Park's aunt about what this mandra is and why her father was buried here. The aunt says she doesn't know anything, but Kim reveals that her father had betrayed the country by siding with the Japanese, and that's why he was buried in this place. Another big secret comes to light when she responds that this isn't possible because Gisun wasn't even Korean. He was actually Japanese. The aunt is confused about why he would hate his own people and be buried in such a bad place. Kim then explains that the numbers on the tombstones are not just random, they are actually coordinates. But Grandpa's daughter had no clue about this. All she and the others were focused on was money. They didn't care about the rituals Grandpa had performed. Many questions still remain in the story, but the answers are getting closer. Later that night, everyone is sleeping when an old man hears strange noises coming from the barn. Curious, he decides to check it out. Then we shift to the Bongil, where we see the same old man waking up in a wounded condition, muttering unknown words. Using Bongil's spells, he is able to stop the haunting and finally wakes up. Afterward, he heals the old man. However, when he checks outside, the old man is no longer in his room. Looking towards the barn, he sees a terrifying sight, a 7-foot-tall figure tearing apart the pigs and eating the old man. Scared, he immediately calls Harim. Harim had been trying to connect with the spirit of her late grandmother, who was a powerful shaman during her time. Just as Bongil calls for her, Harm starts to leave, but her grandmother's spirit stops her, sensing a real and much bigger threat. Harm then goes with Bongil to check the area and finds the coffin ripped open in the middle. The 7-foot-tall figure had escaped from inside. Nearby, they spot a helmet, the helmet of a samurai general, revealing that something ancient and dangerous has been awakened. Bongil quickly goes to call for help, but meanwhile, the same tall figure appears outside the room and asks if anyone is inside, specifically a human. Terrified, Harim bows down before him, pretending to be a tree spirit. She tells him that she is not a human, but his servant. The general then asks if she has brought him food, such as melons or sweet fish. Unfortunately, Harim didn't have any food to offer, so she apologizes. However, the general realizes she is actually human and attacks her. Just in time, Bongil steps in to protect Harim and stabs the general. But the attack has no effect. The general, now a terrifying evil demon, doesn't even flinch. Instead, he tears open Bongil's stomach with his hands, ripping him apart from the liver side, and throws him aside. This specific wound on the liver has an important meaning, which will be discussed later in the theory section. The demonic general then starts moving toward Harim, but by then, Kim and Young arrive at the scene. Seeing the terrifying creature, they both freeze in fear because they had never encountered anything like this before. The general was ready to attack and eliminate Harim, but suddenly, the sound of a rooster crowing echoed in the air, signaling dawn. Hearing this, the general transformed into a ball of fire and disappeared. After he vanishes, the group experiences strange visions that reveal part of the general's story. They learn that the general's element is fire and that he's connected to the grave, meaning he cannot use his powers during the day like he does at night. Bongil, who was severely injured during the fight, is rushed to the hospital, and his condition is critical. Harim feels heartbroken because Bongil was always by her side, and he used to say that as long as she was with him, nothing would happen to him. Kim, feeling guilty, apologizes for dragging them into this dangerous situation. Now, they decide to visit the grave again because they know that to end all of this, they must finish what was started. That is the only way. Their first stop is the home of the old man who initially informed them about the grave robbers. Here, they uncover that these grave robbers adhered to specific feng shui principles, including the concepts of yin and yang, as well as elements such as metal and wood. Meanwhile, in the hospital, Harim realizes that Bongil, who is recovering, has become possessed. He has been transformed into a servant of a towering 7-foot figure, a monstrous general that was guarding something buried in the grave. The exact nature of what he was protecting remains shrouded in mystery. Kim continues digging deeper into the grave, and there, he finds a 7-foot-tall monster who was sleeping at that moment. As I mentioned earlier, this creature is connected to the place. It can move anywhere at night, but the coordinates written on the tombstone force it to return to this specific spot. The most important thing is that it can only come out at night. Its powers are limited to nighttime. If you remember, the coordinates on the tombstone were pointing to this location because something special is buried here. Something that the monster guards. But ultimately, whatever it remains hidden beneath the grave. Now, this is where some key parts of the story are revealed. Before Park died, he said, "The fox has tied the tiger's waist and attacked its spinal cord." But what does this mean? Who does the fox refer to? Many believe it refers to Gi-soon, a figure known for creating the tiger map of Korea. So what could the significance be? It seems that the shape resembles a tiger, and metal rods were inserted at various points. These rods were meant to disrupt the natural energy flow of Korea, aiming to destroy the balance. This disturbance is said to have contributed to the division of South Korea and North Korea. If you notice carefully, beneath Grandpa's grave, the general's grave was in the shape of a T. This formation symbolizes being stabbed in the back and waist, much like the harm intended for Korea. The story about the grave robbers wasn't about treasure hunters after all. They were actually Korean patriots, trying to remove these metal rods in order to restore the energy flow of their land. Their mission was to heal Korea's disrupted energy, but they never found a single rod. Why? Because the rods were hidden here, and Gi-soon had buried them beneath the grave of a royal figure to ensure they would remain untouched. The plan worked. No one would dare disturb a royal grave, and even if someone got close, they would only find this location. Now Kim, Young, and Harim discover this truth. Harim decides to leave her sister near the Bongil, protecting her with spells while she prepares to face the 7-foot demon monster. This demon was actually a Japanese general who had turned into an Oni, a terrible yokai. His transformation prevented him from using his own body after possession. At the same time, Harim realized that the general didn't destroy his body right away because it was protected by Buddhist incantations, inscribed as tattoos. This is how he managed to avoid complete destruction. So, Kim and Young use ink to draw protective incantations on their bodies as well. Now they devise a plan for when night falls. They plan to mislead the Oni, meaning the general, while Kim and Young attempt to remove the rod and kill him using horse blood. However, no matter how much they dig, they cannot find the rod. This leads Oni Harim to reveal more about the situation. He explains that this is a war, detailing how it all began and what Gi-soon did. But the general realizes it's a trap and launches an attack on Harim. At this critical moment, Harim's grandmother's spirit intervenes and saves him. You might be wondering how this is possible. Well, it's believed that the general, out of respect for the native spirits, retreated. Even though he was a foreign spirit on Korean soil, he recognized the power of Harim's grandmother, who was a formidable shaman in her time. This forced the general to back down. Meanwhile, Karabunny returns to the grave and viciously attacks Kim, leaving him half dead. Harim, who was following close behind, manages to save him and the general. She pours horse blood on the general, causing him some harm, but not enough to defeat him. The general retaliates, choking Kim and Young. The situation worsens as the general had already taken control of the Bongil, meaning he could use his body at any moment. Now, Kim begins to experience visions of the general. In these visions, Kim sees the true origin of the rod and the connection between the general and the mystical forces at play. In the vision, Kim encounters a white-faced figure, often called a fox in modern times. This fox was none other than Gi-sun, a powerful shaman spirit who had been guarding the grave. Gi-sun wasn't just an ordinary person. He was fully aware of the powers involved and knew exactly what was required to keep Korea divided. Everyone began searching for the rods, the ones that were halting Korea's progress and energy flow. However, if even one rod remained hidden, Korea would never fully develop. They soon discovered a grim solution. They took the body of the general who had killed 10,000 people and conducted a ritual. This created a swirling force in which different body parts were used. Within the general's body, a katana was forged in fire and stitched into his neck. Inside that katana were the trapped, tormented souls of the 10,000 victims he had slain. Afterward, the general's body, now containing this cursed katana, was buried deep, and it became clear that the final rod was the general's ghost itself. To keep it hidden, Grandpa Park's grave was placed on top so no one would suspect the general's resting place. Kim eventually realized that the general was the final rod. And in this lore, when opposites combine, they neutralize each other. So, Kim stabbed the general using wood in his own blood. Since the katana inside the general was forged in fire, this act caused the destruction of both the general's ghost and the final rod. At the same time, Bongil was freed from the general's possession. You may have noticed that the human-headed snake symbolized the element of water. Water, earth, air, metal, and fire are meant to work together in harmony. But when the grave digger killed the snake, the balance was thrown off. This act awoke the general's ghost, leading to the chaos that followed. The water element, represented by the snake, had been destroyed. Fire and metal were embodied in the general and his katana. To defeat them, wood and water were required. It's said that Koreans traditionally fought using wood, blood, and sweat, exactly what was needed to end this curse. And so, the general's ghost was destroyed, along with the final rod, completing the work that the grave robbers had begun. Grandpa Park's grave was placed above the general's to keep him hidden, as no one would dare disturb a powerful figure like him. In the movie's final scene, the group gets back to their normal lives, and they even attend Kim's daughter's wedding. With that, the movie ends, leaving us with a sense of closure, but also a lingering mystery. So friends, this was the story of the movie Exhuma. Let me give you a short, sweet summary with a little theory. Although I've already provided a detailed explanation, I don't think you'll find such an in-depth breakdown of Korean or Japanese beliefs anywhere else. So, let's dive in. During the war between Japan and Korea, Grandpa and his ancestors fought against the Japanese. They supported Korea, but ended up destroying it from within, becoming powerful and wealthy in the process. When the Japanese authorities realized the war wouldn't last much longer, they ordered the creation of rods to suppress Korea's future development. But these rods were all destroyed by Rob, a Korean patriot. However, Gi-sun created General Gal, turning him into a ghost and placing a katana inside him as the final rod. The katana was buried vertically under Grandpa's grave, forming a T shape. It symbolized Japan stamping on Korea's spine. This was a subtle yet powerful detail. Grandpa was rich and influential, so no one would dare disturb his grave. Thus, the general guarded the final rod. Now, why was Grandpa trying to destroy his family? It's clear he wanted to protect them. Park wanted to save his family, and I believe Grandpa's spirit was involved. He was terrified of General Dean, which is why he acted to destroy his own family. Even though his family had neglected him, his fear of the rod emerging drove him to this point. As for the snake transforming into a human-headed female, it likely began as an ordinary snake living in the heat and water. It attempted to reach Grandpa's grave, but was stopped by the strong wood protecting it. Eventually, it found its way near the general's grave, where negative energy turned it into a Na. When someone disturbed it, its balance was upset, and the general awoke. One more detail. When Bongil was in the hospital, the doctor emphasized twice that Bongil's injury stretched from his stomach to his spine. This was symbolic of how Grandpa's family had betrayed Korea. The general even mentioned the liver, and I think his spirit was also trapped there. You might be wondering why the general wasn't afraid of the incantations written by Kim Young and Han, even though they had been effective elsewhere. The reason was simple. Sweat had spoiled the incantations. However, the tattoos on Bongil couldn't be erased. The general avoided harming anyone inside the temple and transformed into a ball of fire at dawn. This likely showed his belief in Buddhism, as he had been a normal person before becoming Gao. Many in Japan and Korea hold these beliefs, and out of respect, the general must have retreated. The fire transformation was because the general's element was fire. When his grave was disturbed, the ghost became unstable, and the elements went out of balance. Killing the snake upset the water element, which is why it rained. The general returned to the same spot because he was the guardian of that site, and the coordinates kept drawing him back. Here's another interesting theory about the general. He was originally a normal human, but the katana that killed 10,000 people became cursed with their souls. The true demon was this katana, which was filled with negative emotions and controlled by the general's spirit. That's why it was guarding him. Now, you may be thinking, why wasn't the general killed earlier when the katana was inside him? Everything happened so quickly when the general was awakened. Only then did Kim realize where the final rod was. His visions came at the last moment, and during the battle, everything became clear. The events played out as they should, but no one could have known beforehand that the general was the final rod. Otherwise, they could have destroyed him during the day. This secret was too deep to uncover earlier. I hope you enjoyed my detailed explanation of the movie. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe for more insights. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment. I'll see you all in the next exciting video.